Hi, and welcome to The Shit That Happens to Me, a podcast about life, love, and everything in between. I'm your host, Stacey Nye, psychologist, passionate storyteller, wife, mother, wannabe famous person. Now sit back and listen because I'm here to tell you about the shit that happens to me. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Shit That Happens to Me podcast. I am so excited today because I am back in the studio for the first time since last March. So that is really, really exciting. And I have a very special guest with me today, Aimee Gironimi.
Yes.
I said it right.
You got it.
Hi, Aimee.
Hi.
How are you?
I am really well. I'm so glad to be the first in your new studio and back live and in person.
Yes, you are the first.
Yay.
Tell us why I made that big deal about saying your last name.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. And, I got that last name when I was 5 years old, actually. So it was my adoptive father's last name.
Oh.
I couldn't even spell it when I went back to school, like after we were adopted into that name. But Gironimi sounds so much like Geronimo. And everybody says that. Aimee Gironimo, Geronimo. Yeah. So Gironimi was right. And most people really just like hack it to bits. So
well,
you did great.
I've been practicing because, I'm a professional.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, I'm so excited that you're here today.
Yeah, me too.
So tell everybody, you might know that I do this at the beginning of every podcast. How do I know you?
Oh, well, we were just saying, I think you found me randomly on Instagram. Isn't that right? Which is so weird because then we both happen to be in the Milwaukee area.
Right.
Yeah.
And you happen to know the owner of our podcast network, Allison Phillips.
Yes, I do very well. So yeah, what a weird connection, huh?
I know. I'm excited though.
Yeah. Small world. Yeah.
So I found you because you have this very cool job, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you are a voice actor.
I am.
So tell us what that means.
Well, it means a lot more than I thought it meant when I started doing it.
Really?
I mean, anything you hear that has a voice to it, really. So anything from corporate narration to animation to radio commercials. I've done a radio commercial here in town, and you can do things all over the world. I did an e-learning for Stihl, the company in Germany. So it's everything that has a voice to it. Whoever announces on television, anything, whoever announces awards shows, anything and everything you can imagine. There are so many different genres of it.
Yeah.
But basically I sit in a studio in my house all day long and I audition my ass off in hopes of getting,
jobs.
More and more traction. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm only in my, I've been doing this for about 2.5 years.
Oh, that's not that long.
No. So things are really popping, which is great.
Yes.
But it was a long road to get here. That is for sure. So yeah, it's a newer venture for me, but I'm doing it full time. Like I'm
good for you.
I'm a voiceover artist or a voice actor. Yeah.
And so, were you always in your home? Was your studio always in your home even before the pandemic?
Yeah. Most voiceover artists have a studio in their home, except when the pandemic happened. All the people in LA and New York got really screwed because none of them had home studios. So if you're in LA and New York, you're going into studios and you're getting, directed for an audition at your agent's, office space. Okay. So, but yeah, mostly when you get started in this, one of the biggest things you have to figure out is how to set up your studio at home and make sure that it's broadcast quality and that if you're doing things globally, that you sound really sharp.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how did you get into this?
Well, I was an actor in my 20s. And so for 8 years, I always say I joined the circus. I feel like I joined the circus anyway. I toured all over the Midwest for a children's theater company. And so I and a tour partner, and those would switch. For 8 years, I did this. I was on the road directing children's tales that were adapted for now. By a really funny guy who has since passed away. His name was Daniel Nordquist. And he and his wife, Deborah, hired me right out of high school. I was a terrible high school student.
Really?
Yeah. So I went out to Minnesota, and for 8 years I was an actor on the stage. And then I left the circus because there's no money in theater. And I was working for a small regional company. It was a wonderful experience that I would never, give up for a million years. But I needed to do something different. Yeah, I was probably like 26 then. So I moved to Milwaukee because my best friend lived here, and he now lives in Brooklyn. And he's like, just do it. Just do it. Try it. I know.
Yeah.
And so, he convinced me to move here, and then he left.
Then he left.
I know. Then I spent the next 23 years in the nonprofit and corporate world here, and I went to college, got my undergrad and graduate degrees in my 30s.
Nice.
And it turns out I was a great student. I just wasn't a good student back at that time, right?
Sure.
So I did leadership development and organizational development training and education for 23 years here, and then I decided for years I knew that my third and last career was going to be a voice actor.
Really?
I just knew it. And when I was 40, I was like, I'm gonna do this.
Okay.
Right. But I'm good. And I have to do it by 50. So at that time it was like a long-term goal. And then all of a sudden I was 49. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. But the thing that was standing in the way of me and pursuing this big thing was that I was a smoker for 30 years.
Oh.
Because when you're in the theater, everybody smokes, right? And I started that in the late 80s. And so I smoked and super addicted to cigarettes, didn't think I could quit. And so I made a deal with myself. Like I couldn't really pursue voiceover unless I quit smoking, because my voice would have been horse shit.
Yeah.
So I had to give myself a way to finally put that away so that I could become a voice actor. And so when I was right before my 49th birthday, I took myself to Amsterdam so that I could quit smoking.
What do you mean you took yourself to Amsterdam to quit smoking?
I know, it's funny. I could talk to you for 5 hours about this, but long story short, I needed to figure out why was I finally going to quit smoking? Because when you're addicted to cigarettes, it's not enough to say, well, my body is going to feel the impacts of it, because it's sort of one of those things where it's like, well, when you're an addict, you don't think that way necessarily. And I knew I needed to quit. It was becoming embarrassing to smoke around people. Like I would hide, I'd go around the corner and like, oh my God, how could I still be smoking? So I knew I had to do something different. So a couple of years before that, I had been diagnosed with OCD a long time ago, mostly pure O. And I went to therapy out in LA at the OCD Center of Los Angeles. And my therapist was amazing. And he gave me some great cognitive behavioral tools that I actually transferred over to my experience with quitting smoking. So I created a 6-month goal. Like, I'm going to go to Amsterdam because it's one of my favorite places on the planet that I've ever been. And I'm going to spend a week with myself and just getting good with grieving my smoking, looking forward to my future. Right. And then sort of shifting my brain to remember that I'm leaving it there. So I spent a week in Amsterdam.
Wow.
I did. I walked the streets of Amsterdam. I was in Amsterdam, so I smoked everything.
I mean, that's what I thought happened in Amsterdam anyway.
It is. It's what you do. And they smoke everywhere. So I spent a week really like
binge smoking.
Binge smoking, drinking on the streets, going to art galleries and different shops and so forth. And I had no idea how I was going to leave my cigarette habit there. But that's a story. That's a whole nother story for another episode, man. It was just unreal. But I ended up flying away from Amsterdam and trained my brain to remember that I left it somewhere else and that I left it in a really, special place and that it was time to say goodbye. And I haven't smoked for almost 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was sort of like the barrier. So that's how and then on my 49th birthday, I started my first class and I was like, I'm launching this by the time I'm 50, I'm doing it. And I totally did it. And so here I am into my 3rd year and it's been a lot of learning and a lot of craziness. And I'm starting to work with people in LA and New York. And it's unreal. Wow. It's a dream come true.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, really exciting. Yeah.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to I'm going to see what Steve thinks about this, my husband. In order for me to stop shopping,
Yeah.
I need to go to Amsterdam
Yeah.
for a week.
For a week.
Yeah. We'll see
Leave
what
leave your credit card there when you're
yeah,
done.
yeah, leave it there.
Right?
Cut it up.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
see what he thinks of that.
I
I
got
think he
it.
might go for it.
Absolutely. My partner Becky was all about it. She was like, "Go, do it. Have fun. You know,
Yeah.
put it. But that's a great idea." And I came back with a tattoo actually on my arm
Uh-huh.
of a wise owl.
Oh, nice.
I had it drawn there and everything. And my wise owl is my reminder of why I did what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to be a serious voice actor, and now I'm a serious voice actor.
Yes, you're very serious.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty
I
cool.
love that story. Okay, so
Yeah.
so then you became a voice actor.
Yes.
You had to quit smoking.
Yes.
Became a voice actor, and now you're really just.
I'm in the thick of it, and
yeah.
it's so interesting because, you know, when I first started learning it, I didn't know what I didn't know, just like anything. And I'm middle aged, so I'm like, wow, it really does go to show you that you just don't know what you don't know, no matter what, no matter what age you are. Because I went into it sort of pretty green, thinking like, I'm going to do radio commercials and animated series and stuff like that. And it just doesn't work like that. I mean, you have to train and get coached and do demos and build your business and get your marketing plan established. And so there are so many facets to it. I got an a national LGBT business enterprise certification to make sure that I could advance myself sort of in the LGBT space with all of it. So it all started coming together over the last couple of years. And as fate would have it, I had the great luck, it was unluck, but luck. I had the great luck, though, of going through a major reorg where I was working. And I was able to, without saying too much about it, because you know how those things go, but I was able to spend a good chunk of time focused on my voice acting after I left the company. So, which was great. I mean, it was a very gracious exit. It was it was a reorg, all that kind of stuff, but I really lucked out.
Yeah.
So then I started getting really serious about it and started training with people who are really steeped in the business. And so now I'm working with Randy Thomas, who is 10-time Oscar announcer. She's a pioneer.
Oh.
She's the first female announcer of the Oscars.
Nice.
She's ABC Nightline right now and all sorts of other cool things. And I wrote to her and I said, I really want to do like live announcing, awards shows, TV promo, that kind of thing. And she was like, let's do it. So I have been working with her for a year now, and she has opened my eyes to the ins and outs of, like the for real voiceover world. So now I'm training with like, people who are doing like trailers and TV promos, and I'm just constantly digging into the TV promo world. So like, live on CNN kind of stuff or things like that. And then corporate narration, because I spent so much time in the corporate world. So I had to like figure out where my little niche areas were and kind of roll with it. And we have this studio in our house with in a spare bedroom closet. I mean, we took a 3x5 closet.
Yeah.
And we turned it into an audio studio.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's crazy.
So what kinds of things would we have heard you in?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Like, you may have heard me on a radio commercial in the Milwaukee market, but a lot of times you don't hear me in stuff because I'm doing like corporate narration. Right now I'm doing a lot of corporate narration. So you hear more of that when you're internal, to a company, and e-learning and things like that. What I'm working toward with my agents. So I have agents in Milwaukee and Chicago, and those are what would be considered regional markets. And they send you as many auditions as they can for the big stuff, the big national commercial roles, or the voice of a new show.
Yeah.
The real big stuff. And in your first 5 years, that's what you're building toward.
Yeah.
So I just auditioned for a big, huge one yesterday. I was like, you never know.
Of course.
That's what they say in your first 5 years. One of them is going to pop and be the thing that sort of takes you to the next level with your career.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but it's crazy. Like today I was recording for some people at noon remotely. and the lawn service came by that mows 3 lawns on our block, and they were like mowing and blowing, and I was flipping out. I mean, it's good stress, but it's like, holy shit, they're like mowing next door, and I'm patched in with these people at noon, and are they going to get it done? And turn off the furnace. And so Becky handles a lot.
Oh, boy.
To make sure we're all set for what I have to do. It's pretty intense and fun.
Well, I know during the pandemic, I was recording things, and my husband would decide that would be a good time to like cut the grass or blow the leaves or some stupid thing like that.
It's the worst. And you realize, I'm involved in all these forums online, voice actor forums, and everybody's like, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, like, my wife flushed the toilet when I was on live with CBS in LA.
Yeah, right.
So it can get a little goofy, but I mean, it's been super fun. It's trial and error. I've had some great luck in that. I've probably been able to launch faster than the average bear, but that's because I've had the opportunity to put a lot of time into it. A lot of time. So I went into it like thinking I knew all about it because I was an actor, you know, and you are a voice actor, but you have to learn how to do it differently. So my first script I ever read a couple of years ago, like now I would say, like, Ireland is a land of misty rolling hills, and I would just describe it very nicely into the mic. But when I first picked it up and thought I knew what I was doing for my first coach, I was like, Ireland is a land of misty rolling hills. And Becky laughs about it all the time because I'm like, oh my God, so terrible, so terrible. I had a lot to learn about how to actually be an actor on the microphone.
Yeah. So, I mean, I certainly like the first way you did it.
Yeah.
But the second way you did it had some personality to it too. But is that just like wrong? All the breathiness?
Well, you got to find a balance. It depends on what you're doing a spot for. Like today, the big thing is conversational. They want everything to be super conversational. And you're like, it's so hard to sound naturally conversational because like the specs they give you are really interesting. So it's like, we want you to be conversational, but not too aloof. We want you to be excited, but don't hype it up. We don't want radio or announcery, but we also want you to drive the point home.
Oh boy.
Every time, everything.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're like, I'm just going to be me.
Yeah.
Well,
so it might surprise my listeners to know that I've had no formal training doing podcasts.
I bet you've learned a lot.
Well, and I thought I knew what I was doing though, because I listened to podcasts, which was ridiculous, a ridiculous thing to think.
Right.
So
right. Yeah, because I listened to voiceover. I knew what it was.
Yeah,
right?
I still don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm being myself, and I know the best about that. So,
and that's what they teach you. They're like, you know what? Because I've had coaches and directors now over the last few years, like, girl, just settle down. I can tell you're nervous. I can hear it in your voice. I can like let your shoulders down or relax your jaw. And I'm like, oh my God, they can actually am I on a camera or something? Like, how can they? So you learn, over time how to speak into the mic and how to interpret the copy. And, like I'm doing, auditions for big brands, and it's really hard not to overact or overdo it. So you really have to get a handle on like how to break down a script and how to not be like, buy your Tide tomorrow and get savings today or whatever. It's just not like that anymore. Right. So it's this whole new era of voiceover where it's got to sound like super natural. Yeah. And I'm not a millennial. So a lot of times we're looking for that fresh millennial voice. And like, I don't know what a fresh millennial sounds like. I'm a fresh Gen X, I guess you would say. So yeah, I mean, it's just really trial and error. And then, you get your 5 years in, just like a lot of things. And all of a sudden, oh, okay. I mean, yeah, I guess I think it back to when I was in grad school with what I did in the corporate world too. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
You get into it and 5 years later, 10, 20 years later, you're like, oh my God, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So it's been a trip.
So I heard I've heard a couple of little voices that you've done. Like, so is some of it not your own voice? Are you doing some like acting? Like, do you have like like cool voices that you do?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I want to hear those.
Yeah, I learned character work from this really cool guy in LA. His name is Michael Yurchak, and he's like, let's just build sort of like a suitcase of voices, right? And like, let's get some like archetypes and like really develop like a set of characters, because you can build off of those. So I have like my target lady is actually, I don't know, well, she'll never listen to this podcast, hopefully, but
Is your real target lady?
what
huh?
if she does, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I should have said my Marget lady.
Right.
Anyway, no offense to her. She just had a great voice and great cadence. So I do like this, right? Yeah. So she said to me one day, you did make an appointment last year for that eye appointment, but because you didn't confirm, we just went ahead and canceled that.
Oh,
Like, oh, all right, cool. So she became a character.
yeah, right.
Right.
Of course.
And then I do like little guys, like, oh, I love doing my little guy. I can be a bug, or I can, be in a, whatever kind of animated series. So I do a lot of kids stuff.
Uh-huh.
And then you learn about like where to place your voice. So then I do like an old lady, and I get my voice in a completely different space. And people are always like, do this, but it's hard because you need the characters there.
Yeah, sure.
I just impersonated Phyllis Diller for 2 really great guys.
Really?
I did. I had to study her. Like, I know Phyllis Diller and I remember Phyllis Diller very well, but like to learn how somebody talks. So like if you close your eyes and imagine that it's really her, is it really her? So I was like, I had to learn how to like use my voice, and she kind of purred like a kitten in the 50s kind of a thing.
I love that.
Yeah. And then she'd have she'd do her big laughs. And, she was a shit giver, and she was, disparaging of her mother-in-law. So I did this whole thing with them, and it was like astounding and super fun. So yeah, I get to make up characters. I get to do things like that. I'm not an impersonator though, so that was like a really interesting one-off. I mean, I could do it. I could do Jean Stapleton doing Edith Bunker.
Yeah,
I do a lot of Archie. Oh, you'll never guess what. That kind of stuff.
that was great.
It was fun. Yeah. So yeah. You just create this, like sometimes you meet people and you kind of put that in your pocket. We heard somebody the other night at some store, and she was kind of talking like this through her mouth and through her nose. And you're like, oh my God, I'm totally going to use that. Like, people are so interesting. So like it takes people watching to a whole new level. It's more like people listening.
Yeah.
It's really fun. But then, it's not, again, to make fun of anyone. It's just to build on that. So like, it doesn't have to be completely right, but I can also build on that and just, turn it into a different kind of a character.
And I think, we don't even know like how we're coming across, our own voices. Like when I did the, got on stage, everyone's probably sick of hearing me talk about this, but with, Karen and Georgia, they went and talked about it later, and Karen talked about my Wisconsin accent.
Oh.
And I was a little insulted by that because I'm from Chicago.
Oh, they're like, oh.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it's Chicago accent, first of all.
Well, if she'd said that, I might not have been insulted.
Yeah, right.
But it was, it was just like, oh, she's calling me a cheesehead. But yeah. So we might not even, realize
we don't hear it. I get that too. Like, I've done a really good job of taming my Wisconsin, or my Midwestern is what I would call it, my Midwestern accent, but I can turn it on real quickly too. I can do like, I do my best friend's mom. And she would be like, oh, hi, honey, it's Mom. I just was calling to tell you hi. I'm going to make 2 dips this weekend. Now, which one is the one that you like with the artichokes? I could do that super easily. But I could also be like, let's talk about, something with an international flair, an international flavor. And I'm not like saying flavor.
Yeah, right, right.
So you can sort of switch it up. But I have done that my whole life. I talk like people talk.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like I always say, like, I don't want anybody to ever think I'm insulting them, but it's like, I have a friend who talks just like this, and I can't help not talking like that person when I'm trying to talk like that person. So it's kind of an imitation game. It's fun.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So I imagine some shit has happened to you along the way.
I've had some shit happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Well, I guess the biggest shit that happened, I guess, doesn't necessarily have to do with my voiceover career. Well, there's one shit that happened that was super embarrassing, actually, as a voice actor. So last year, I had the good fortune of being selected as a finalist for this big audition competition through the
Wow.
Society of Voice Arts and Sciences. And it was the first time I had ever submitted for a competition like that. And it was global because it was virtual.
Yeah, right.
So everything went virtual when I became a full-time voice actor. So I was really kind of learning the ropes virtually. So I'm whittled down from like 460 some, people. I was like a quarter finalist, and it's like, oh my God, I feel like I'm on The Voice. It was crazy. And then all of a sudden I get told I'm like one of 6 top finalists for the big global, shebang online. So I am like heart pounding out of my chest, right? So I take the whole week. It's a really serious script about COVID, because that was really going on at the time. And I worked with a coach, and he and I decided that I would take it very seriously. Like, at first I was like, like I'm talking to a friend, because that's what they ask you to do. Let's be really super conversational. And then we were like, nah, this is pretty serious right now. Like we were fucked last fall, right? So this was at that time when it was like, oh, you can't really even make it sound like conversational. So I took it super seriously. So the 6 of us are on live. I mean, there's like, this is directed out of like Warner Brothers in LA. Wow. So I'm like, okay, I'm going into my studio now. I'll be right back. Like, wish me luck. And then my heart's pounding. I'm sweating. And, we see the first contestant get up there, and she's been doing this for 20 years. And she rocks it. Right. And the question she asked was, do we have to keep it within the 15 seconds? Now, when you get a spec like that, when you get told like it's got to be 15 seconds, you can't mess around. It's got to be 15 seconds. You are talking really super fast, and you're really like, you are practicing the shit out of it to make sure that you're getting it right. So she does this really like cool, laid back, like she's talking to a friend, conversational. And I'm like, huh. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I made the choice to be more serious about this.
Yeah.
So, and she takes like, 25 seconds for it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to show them that I can do this in 15 seconds, and then I can do it seriously. So, I mean, I wasn't thinking about it in a cocky way, but I was just like, this is like, this is going to, oh my God, this could be a chance of a lifetime, right? This is going to knock it out of the park. So they get to, well, first of all, so then I'm like 5th out of 6, right? And I'm watching the chat, and all the people around the world don't realize we can see the chat. And they're like, girl number 1's got it in the bag. Who wants to place bets? Blah, 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 blah. And they're all talking about, like how amazing she was. And then the second guy, like, like, wow, he needs a little work. And like, they were getting like super conversational about it on chat. And I'm like, okay, I have to stop watching the chat because they're kind of freaking me out. Like, who wants to place bets on person number 1? Like, I'm number 5.
Yeah, right.
Like, hang tight. So I get on there. And I'm like, hi, everybody. They're like, introducing me from LA, and they screwed up my last name. And it was the whole big thing. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, super fucking serious, really fast, super serious. Get it in 15 seconds. Oh my God, it's done. Yeah. And they're like, and these are big producers and like agents in LA. And they're like, okay, you sounded really scared. Oh, I was mortified. I was like, huh. Like I'm not scared.
Just following directions.
15 seconds. And they're like, it was really rushed. And I'm like, in my head, I'm spinning, I'm flipping out, because I'm like, I don't know even how to do it any slower or less serious right now, because I had programmed it and lesson learned, right? You have to turn on a dime. Okay. But I took it very seriously and literally, like you do. And so one of the producers is like, let's have you do it again. Let's have you slow down a little bit. They give everybody a second take to adjust. Let's have you slow down, get a little casual, like you're talking to a friend, super conversational. I'm thinking in my head, that's what I was gonna do. Yeah. So I'm like, blah, 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 blah. I do it as fast as I can again, super serious for 15 seconds, done. And they were like, thank you very much.
Right. Oh, no.
At the end, girl number 1 wins. Right. And I have egg on my face, and they give everybody feedback at the end. And the producer goes, yeah, you didn't make the adjustment. And I was like, oh my God, this is so mortifying. But
you didn't make the
I
adjustment.
didn't make the adjustment. What a great lesson for me, though. Like, always make the flippin' adjustment.
Yeah.
Like, if they say, do it like this instead,
Yeah.
take a deep breath
Yeah,
and
yeah.
do it like that instead.
Right.
Like, it really kind of snapped me out of robotic mode with
Yeah.
some of the things that you rehearse and practice. But it was pretty mortifying because there were like thousands of people around the world watching. And so, like, oh, number one, was and she was amazing. She was phenomenal. She deserved to win, but it was a mortifying experience because I was newer to it, So yeah, so that was like a shit that happened to me moment, I suppose.
For sure. For sure. But as long as you can learn from the shit that happens to you, that helps.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I thought I was destined to not be able to even launch this voiceover career because when I went to Amsterdam, I had everything happen that could possibly happen to stop me from getting there. I was like, like the day before I left on my big trip, I was all planned out. I had some tours scheduled. I had my flights. I treated myself to first class on the way there so I could so I could sleep on the way and just like have this moment. And the day before, I was running up the what do you call it? The granite stairs to the US Bank building downtown to get my euros, right? Mm-hmm. And I have my favorite jeans on that I'm going to wash that night and pack for my trip. And they were fitting real great. And it was raining and I'm running up the steps and I take the worst dig. And I was like, and my knee hurt so bad. I couldn't believe it. And I looked down. I had the hugest hole in my knee. No. I had blood pouring down my leg, all down my pants. I was like, what happened? I had like a scrape that went so deep that the whole time in Amsterdam, like one night my tights stuck to it. Oh. It was so bad. One of those kind of things. So I was like, wow, well, that's not a great start to the trip. So my knee was killing me. Mm-hmm. And then my flight from Chicago to Minneapolis was delayed and delayed and delayed. And I'm like, shit. And I'm getting drunk on wine. And we land and they know I'm landing to go to Amsterdam. And they're like, you got to get to the next gate. Stat.
Oh, I hate that.
Stat. And my knee is killing me. Yeah. I've got my carry-on and my backpack with me and I'm running and I'm in like gate C8 and it's like C12. So I'm like, oh, not a problem. But C12 is a mile down and around the corner or something. It was crazy. Yeah. It was like C8 ended one concourse.
Oh, yeah. You mean gate 8.
Or gate 8.
And, yeah.
And then like gate 12 was like, 2 miles away or something. So I'm trucking at like 10 o'clock at night and I'm running down to where the ticket booth or whatever you call it. What is it? The gate check.
Yeah.
I've flown a million times. I can't think of the word. Anyway, they're closing the door. Yeah. And I'm like, no. And oh, sorry, I keep knocking that. You're going to have all sorts of great sound effects. He says, I'm sorry, we can't open the door. And I see the pilots like, check, doing all their things. And I was half in the bag and I was menopausal and I was having a hot flash and I had, had wine and I was landing in a thunderstorm. So I threw my backpack down like a baby. You've got to be kidding me. You guys knew my plane had landed. Sorry, there's nothing we can do. So I had to wait like 18 hours to get my next flight to Amsterdam. Yeah. And I was like smoked my brains out.
You stayed there at the airport?
No, I had to find a hotel because they were like, we can't get you on a flight until like 5 o'clock tomorrow or something crazy like that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there was just like one thing after another stopping me from getting there and then getting through the whole experience. But I mean, in the end, it worked out great. It made for a great story, but
yeah, for sure. I mean, I had one of those, and I think I told the story already, running through the airport and then getting stopped by security. I was already late.
It's the worst.
And then, of course, because you're feeling all super anxious and stressed, security's like, come on, we're going to pat you down.
Yeah, right.
And I get a little overly entitled at those times. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've got to, blah, blah, blah. And they already we're maybe going to check your bag. We don't know if it'll get there. And I'm, and then they're calling my name over the loudspeaker. And I look at the security person. I'm like, that's me. They're calling me. And probably every time I said something like that, she just went slower. And I had like a bum ankle. And finally, though, I did make that flight. And they were like, "Oh, we just put your suitcase on." So they were really nice. That's the difference
Wow.
between Milwaukee and maybe everything else. So that's one of the
Yeah.
benefits of living in Milwaukee.
It is. It
They're
truly
pretty
is.
nice. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, they're pretty cool about it. But yeah, those are scary moments. I used to
Yeah.
fly all the time for work, and I have so many like crazy can't get through in time things like where you almost miss your flight.
Yeah.
Those are the worst. But
Well, when you travel with Steve and I, you get to the airport 2 hours before your flight's supposed to leave. So that almost never happens.
yeah,
to
I'm
me
like 45
anymore.
minutes ahead of time because I was such a seasoned flyer. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to get used to flying again though. I was a very fearful flyer for years and then got a handle on it because of work. And now I'm like, wow, I haven't flown for a while. It's gonna be really weird to get back on the Airbus.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I know, I do love it. I know, get me out of here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't love to fly, but I still can't wait to go. I mean, I'm going to go somewhere in June. So I'm
that's
really
nice.
looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're going to go somewhere next January, but I think I'm going to be spending a lot more time in New York and LA, which will be really fun.
You're so famous now.
Well, once I get there, it's like it's a grind every day. Like, I take every opportunity I can to audition for stuff. And it's funny because I can imagine, I know voice actors and we're all the same. Like you get an audition comes through and it's like, I can just see every voice actor in the universe, like scrambling to get to their studio and get the thing recorded and get it sent in because it's a numbers game. First of all, you have to do it. I do 10, 15, 20 auditions a day. Plus your marketing and all that kind of stuff. But the big ones that come through, everybody's auditioning for them. So it's just like the sooner you get it in, the more likely you are to be heard kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, but I've definitely screwed some up in that regard. Like people have auditions with me, like accidentally forgetting to take out my breaths. Like, or once I had.
What do you mean take out your breath?
Well, because when you do voiceover and you're reading a script, it's like, the future of our corporate, narrative is now diversity and inclusion is so important. And then you launch into a whole other thing. So you edit out your breaths. If they're really,
you do your own editing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have to learn all of that too. And the software involved and all of that. So I edit out my own breaths usually. And I had one where not only did I have all of the breaths in it, but in the middle of it, I went, I turned it in. I'm sure they must hear that stuff all the time, but I was mortified. I was like, no. Like, and sometimes you can't take it back depending on where
once you sent it, you remembered you did that.
Well, no, it's what happens is like there are casting sites online. So you work with agents on things and then you're also on casting sites constantly. Sometimes you turn it in, depending on the casting site you're using, that's it.
Oh, okay.
So if you screw it up, you can't take it back and redo it and send it in. So somebody got a lot of breaths and one big, like clearing the throat and stuff. Cause it's crazy. You have to learn how to not run out of breath. And sometimes you do. And sometimes you cough and snort and all sorts of stuff happens. So you have to be very careful. I learned very quickly to like listen back to everything twice.
Wow.
Because sometimes you catch something and you're like, oh my God, they're totally going to hear that and they're going to think I'm a loser.
Okay. Well, my poor listeners, because I might do that and not even know I'm doing that. Although I do listen and edit my stories, but still.
Yeah. And in the voice acting world, it goes so fast that, if you're not on the ball that day for whatever reason, you could really screw up a big. I mean, it's always the next audition could be your big break. So,
wow, what pressure.
That no pressure at all. Yeah, right. Yeah. I just before I came here, I did an audition for a Mercedes commercial internationally. And I was like, I'm just going to do one more quick audition before I leave. Like run into my studio and like, let me break it down for you. Let's, ride in a Mercedes. Like you have to like get in the zone. And it's a lot of pressure because then if you don't book with your agents either, you're kind of screwed. They're going to be like, so we haven't booked you on anything for the last year. So we're going to drop you.
Oh no.
It hasn't happened to me. Thank God.
Yeah.
I'm booking. But it's really a daily grind for sure, but super fun.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like fun and intimidating and pressure and
characters.
Creativity, like all all rolled up into one.
Yeah, and there's such a cast of characters out there. Everybody has a different opinion about how to do things and what to
Yeah.
do and who you should know and who you should get coached from and who you should do your demos with and like lessons learned along the way. And I always say I've made $10,000 in mistakes because you invest in things and then you look back a year later and go, oh my God, that's so not what I needed to do.
Yeah.
I should have done this, but eventually that evens out, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So hopefully I won't get into any more competitions where I make a total ass of myself.
So will there be a point where you just won't have to audition anymore? You'll just have like something regular? Perhaps.
That is a hope. Usually, I mean, you're never really done auditioning because even if you get a show, like there are some people out there who have some really great gigs. Like they get a 3-year contract for a grocery store chain, or they get a show like an HGTV show, being the in-show narrator. Wow. Those are the times when you're like, oh my God, thank God I don't have to audition 20 times a day.
Yeah.
But you're still working with your agents to bring on more and more projects as you can, because that world is so up and down. It's such a roller coaster ride. You could be really hot and then you could be really not very quickly. Yeah. So you have to build a client base. So I have all sorts of people that like I've done things with. And in fact, I just had a repeat client today because they liked what I did. And so you build up like a client base and everything, but it's scary because it's like, oh my God. Okay, so here I am in my 50s. I'm not doing corporate work anymore. There are no guarantees. This is all about me not screwing it up. So it's every day I wake up though and I say, this is gonna be the day. And I get a lot of work now, which is great. But that next level national commercial is going to be, I'll have to let you know when I get one. Like if you get one within your first few years, it's a pretty good day.
Let me tell you though, nothing is guaranteed.
Nothing
is guaranteed.
Oh, my corporate role wasn't guaranteed. Yeah, right.
So depending on yourself is probably the best you can do for yourself.
It's about not getting into a slump because you second guess yourself. Yeah. And my OCD brain, part of my biggest thing is second guessing, right? And in this business, you have to learn that it doesn't need to be rejection. Right? Because a lot of people feel rejected when they don't get a gig. And I learned very quickly, the job is auditioning. The job is learning. The job is marketing. Like the job is all of those things. And the reward once in a while that comes from that, all of that hard work is a really cool gig.
Yeah.
So I could be the voice of something someday and I could look back and go, holy, whatever. Like I want to do CNN promos. So I'm working on a demo to send to them right now so that, someday maybe they'll be like, oh, hey, remember that, girl who sent us that demo and thought she could be a CNN person? Well, we need her for something.
Yeah.
You never know. Right.
I think I'd be very rejection sensitive myself.
Rejection is interesting. And people, often say I feel so defeated and I feel so rejected. So I've tried to really turn it into not this time.
Yeah.
Not this time.
So do they let you know when you're rejected?
Not
or
always.
You just don't hear?
Sometimes you just don't hear, which is even worse for me because I need finality.
Yep, me too.
I need closure on things with my doubting. So when I don't hear back, like I've been shortlisted for some things, and shortlisted means like you're one of 2 people they're thinking about for this thing. So I got shortlisted for a big thing from a studio out in LA. And I was like, oh my God, if I get this, like
LA, here I
shit.
come.
Yeah. And didn't hear back. Well, they had me do a couple of different rounds of auditions. And I was like, oh my God, I think I'm their person because they're having me do more. And didn't hear. And I said to my agent, like, I don't know, like 4 days later. So no news good news? And she's like, no. No news is terrible news. Like,
you got so close.
But you don't often hear back. So then that's like a double cluster, right? Because you're like, I don't know if I got it or not. And I don't want to get too excited, but I don't want to be too aloof about it. So, and 2 weeks ago, same thing happened. That's like, you don't want to feel rejected. But I was up for a big project and they were super psyched about it. And he wrote me back. He did get back to me like 2 days later. They went with somebody else. And I was like, son of a bitch. Because it could or couldn't be the day that launches you forward. So
Right.
one of these days, though, I have to always remember that, like, one of these days. But
So, Aimee, is it about just like getting a big project and, being able to relax, or is it about fame?
it's not about fame, because I
Okay.
don't really think, voice actors who get famous are like the Nancy Cartwrights of the world. She was Bart Simpson.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Or my hero, Pamela Adlon. She was Bobby in King of the Hill.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, but those are people who got famous because of how crazy talented they are, but they don't, strike me as people who are seeking fame necessarily.
Yeah.
In the voice acting world too, it's like, do I want to be able to be well respected in that industry as somebody who came in at 50 years old and made
Mhm.
something of it? Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I'm getting to know a lot of cool people, but I'm also going to be the one who trips on the stage if I ever have to do anything in front of all of them.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to just keep it real that way. It's not about fame. I want to be successful with it.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
I decided to change my entire
Right.
life
Career.
to be a voice actor. Like, it's all on me. And it's
Mhm.
what I want to do. Like, I'm not going back to the corporate world, so it's got to work.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let me see if I've missed it. I haven't even looked at your sheet that I have everyone fill out because we've had
been
such a
rapping.
good conversation. Your first voiceover script?
Yeah,
Did you
that
tell
was, we did. Yeah, we talked about
Okay.
that. My Ireland is a land.
Yes. Oh, right. And your breakthrough moments and lessons learned. Yeah, you kind of talked about that too.
Yeah, kind of talked about that too. Like, the breakthrough moments happen all the time. I think my biggest breakthrough moment was this really cool guy though, named Dave Walsh. He lives out in LA, and he does, actually, I got this shirt from him.
Oh, let your voice be heard, not silenced. Say their names.
Yeah. He's really, really awesome coach. And he has this incredible story about how he was thriving as a voice actor and then ran into some vocal issues and had to work with a world-renowned physician to find his voice again. So he started coaching people to find their voices.
Huh.
And he did it with people around the world who weren't voice actors. It was people who were actually incapable of getting their voice back after, something happened. Crazy cool stuff.
Yeah.
My breakthrough moment was with him because he taught me what it means to speak out here to out here instead of in here. And so I would always, like, my jaw would get really tight when I would, do auditions, and my throat would get really tight. And, usually you're talking right in here and you're trying so hard to like use every muscle in here. And it wasn't until he taught me his methodology, which is, his intellectual property. So I can't really teach it necessarily, but until he told me how to really get my voice out in front of me, I really feel like I wasn't the true or most authentic voice actor I could be.
Okay.
And now I feel like I'm far more authentic than I was when I first started, because I'm just being me and I'm using my tools and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see. Yeah.
Cool.
Just want to be successful at it. That's all.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you are already.
We kind of want to retire on Coronado Island, though.
Oh my God, what a beautiful
the
place.
coast of San Diego. Yeah. So,
it's really expensive.
It's super expensive. We're like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen unless for some reason, I hit it real big.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun. So like, I would say tune in, 5 years from now and see what happens, because geez, even a year from now, it could be a totally different ball game.
Well, you're going to have to keep us posted.
Yeah, I totally will. Because I will have more shit that happens to me.
Yes.
As I go along. That's for sure.
That's the thing. Sometimes people say, do you worry you're going to run out of things to talk about? And I'm like, there's always shit that happens.
Oh my God.
Once
always.
I tell all the old stories, there'll be new shit that'll happen to me.
For sure. Sure. And I have so many stories outside of being a voice actor. So they all kind of tie together. Storytelling, right?
Absolutely.
That's what it really kind of boils down to for me with voiceover. It's really about storytelling. Like, I don't want to do bullshit. Like, I won't do Republican political ads. I will do Democrat political ads because that's, where I am. And I'm not going to do like a lesson on nuclear warheads in China or something like that. Right. I will do things that I'm passionate about. Of course I'll do a commercial for a soap. Yeah. As well, because that's what we do. We get into that business. But ultimately, I want to do things that are LGBT focused,
Yeah.
social justice focused, racial justice focused, so that I feel like I'm doing what I love, but I'm also doing what
Making a
I'm
difference.
voicing what
also.
I'm passionate
Yeah,
about
yeah.
too, right? So
Yeah.
it'll be a good balance.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, and I'm so happy to have spoken with you.
Thank you. Me too. I feel
Yeah.
like I didn't get to tell you anything really. I was
You
kind
told me everything.
all over the map, but
Oh.
it is an all over the map kind of a process, that's for sure. So thank you for having me. It's been great.
My pleasure. I really appreciate meeting you and
Yeah.
having you come on. And yeah, you definitely have to keep us posted.
We will definitely touch base again. I'll update you. Hopefully next year I'll be saying, wasn't that cool? And then like 3 weeks later, I got my national commercial.
And maybe we'll even be recording in LA at that time.
All right. You never know. Here's to us, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, mine's empty. I almost never finish a drink. So I'm not sure what that means.
This was a tall one. So
yeah.
I'm still have a little to finish, but thank you.
My pleasure. All right. Thanks, Aimee. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
You can find the Shit That Happens to Me podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts. And remember, don't be a crumb.